It all began with one bad decision, one sacrifice made for the wrong reasons. Odin gave up his eye to see the future, but in doing so, he became blind to the present. And that single mistake would cost him everything. That choice would create the very monsters he feared. And it was a choice born from the single most important truth of the Norse world. The gods were not immortal. They could die. And a terrible prophecy, Ragnarok, was the shadow that stalked their golden halls. At the head of this doomed pantheon stood Odin, not a king of comfort, but a wanderer, a seeker, a god obsessed with one single question: how do you defy destiny? He hungered for knowledge, not for its own sake, but as a weapon, a shield against the coming dark. But was it a shield, or was it the very hammer that shattered his world? The sagas tell a story of a great war against giants and monsters. But if you look closer, if you decipher the runes carved into the bone of the story, you will find a different truth. This was not a war against fate. This was the story of how a god's fear forged the keys to his own oblivion. To understand how it all went wrong, you must stand with Odin at the root of the world tree, Yggdrasil. Before you is the well of Mimir, the well of wisdom, and its guardian will not give its secrets freely. The price for a single drink, for a single glimpse into the tapestry of what is to come, is an eye. Imagine you are the Allfather. You make the choice. You surrender a part of your own body, your physical sight, for a glimpse of cosmic truth. The pain is blinding, but then the vision comes. You see it all. You see the wolf Fenrir, his jaws wide enough to swallow the world. You see the serpent Jormungandr, rising from the sea to poison the sky. You see your own sons fall. You see yourself fighting a desperate final battle and losing. The knowledge is yours, but the price was more than just an eye. The price was peace. The price was trust. From that moment on, Odin was no longer just a king. He was a warden, desperately policing a future he had seen but could not accept. The vision did not empower him. It shackled him with paranoia. And that paranoia began to curdle, to fester. It found its focus not on distant giants or cosmic forces, but on the children of a single troublesome god, the trickster Loki. Aesirus had whispered to Odin that Loki's offspring would bring about the god's undoing. And in Odin's fear-stricken mind, the prophecy was not a warning, it was a verdict. He saw not children, but weapons aimed at his heart. So he acted, not with the wisdom he had paid so dearly for, but with the brutal certainty of a tyrant. This is the turn. This is where the veil is pulled back. Loki's children were not yet the monsters of prophecy. They were simply different, powerful, unpredictable. It was Odin's fear that would give them their monstrous crowns and their reasons for vengeance. First, there was the great serpent, Jormungandr. Odin seized the creature when it was still young, little more than a snake. He did not kill it. Instead, he cast it into the great ocean that encircles Midgard, the world of men. He thought he had disposed of a threat. But what did he truly do? He gave it an entire world to grow in. An endless dark cradle where it could nurse its resentment and grow to a size so immense that it could wrap itself around the earth and bite its own tail. Odin did not banish a monster, he incubated it. Then there was Hel, Loki's daughter. One side of her body was that of a beautiful woman, the other that of a rotting corpse. Fearing her connection to the dead, Odin banished her to the deepest, darkest realm, Niflheim. He made her its queen. He gave her dominion over all who died of sickness or old age. He thought he was containing her power. Instead, he built her a kingdom. He handed her the authority she would later use to hold the soul of the beloved god Balder hostage, an act that would shatter the last hope of the Aesir and make Ragnarok an inevitability. The pact was sealed, and the first stones of Asgard's tomb were laid. But the greatest sin, the most pivotal act of paranoia, was reserved for the wolf, Fenrir. Prophecy said a wolf would kill Odin. And in Fenrir, Odin saw his own death walking on four paws. The wolf was brought to Asgard, and at first, only the god of courage, Tyr, dared to feed him. But as Fenrir grew at an impossible rate, Odin's fear grew with him. He decided the wolf had to be bound. Twice the gods tried to chain Fenrir with mighty fetters, and twice the wolf shattered them with ease. They were not just chains of metal, they were chains of pride. The gods presented it as a game, a test of Fenrir's legendary strength. The wolf, proud and trusting, played along. But Odin knew no earthly chain could hold him. He commissioned the dwarves to forge an impossible ribbon, Gleipnir. It was made from the 6 mythical ingredients: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. It was as soft as silk, but stronger than any iron. When the gods presented this ribbon to Fenrir, the wolf was no fool. He sensed deceit. He saw the fear in their eyes. He would only allow himself to be bound if one of the gods would place their hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. A silence fell over the gods. The great Thor, slayer of giants, looked away. The mighty Heimdall, guardian of the Bifrost, was silent. They were about to break the most sacred bond in the cosmos, an oath. Only Tyr, the brave, the honorable, stepped forward and placed his right hand into the wolf's gaping maw. You can feel the moment, the warmth of the wolf's breath, the sharp points of his teeth resting on Tyr's skin. The gods wrapped the silken ribbon around Fenrir, and the wolf strained. But this time, the fetter held, and the more he struggled, the tighter it became. Fenrir was trapped. He looked to the gods, and in their eyes, he did not see honorable rivals. He saw liars. He saw fear. He saw betrayal. And they laughed. They laughed at his capture. All except one. All except Tyr, who stood silent as the wolf, in a final agonizing act of justice, snapped his jaws shut. The silence that followed was heavier than any mountain. In that moment, everything changed. With that single act of betrayal, Odin had not prevented a prophecy, he had armed it. He had taken a powerful creature and given it a reason for cosmic, world-ending hatred. He taught Fenrir that the gods' words were worthless, their honor a lie. He created the very monster he feared, a beast fueled now not by instinct, but by the memory of a broken promise and the taste of a god's blood. Why did Odin, the wisest of the gods, do this? Why did he walk step by step down the very path he sought to avoid? Because he committed the ultimate act of hubris. He believed he could control the future. He was so obsessed with the what of the prophecy, the wolf that would kill him, the serpent that would poison his son, that he completely ignored the why. The prophecy wasn't a script written in stone. It was a warning about the consequences of fear and dishonor. Ragnarok wasn't just a battle. It was a reckoning. It was the universe balancing the scales. The wolf would break his chains at the end of days, not just because he was strong, but because the gods had proven themselves unworthy of his trust. The armies of hell would rise not just because she was powerful, but because the gods had shown her no justice. Odin's paranoia became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every measure he took to secure Asgard's future was a nail in its coffin. He sacrificed his eye for a truth he couldn't bear to understand. He traded wisdom for information, and in doing so, he lost the ability to tell the difference. He saw the final chapter of his story and spent his entire life writing the terrible pages that led up to it. This is the echo of Odin's story. It is a divine riddle that whispers to us across the ages. It is a timeless warning, not about gods and monsters, but about us. It warns that a future we fear is a future we are most likely to create. That in our frantic search for security, we can sow the seeds of our own destruction, breaking the very bonds of trust and honor that truly keep us safe. Odin's tragedy is that of the leader, the parent, the person so terrified of a potential storm that they tear their own house down, board by board, just to be sure. He looked into the abyss, and the abyss gave him a blueprint, and he followed it all the way to the end.